How many did he say was in the party? 6, right?
Why?
Who's this? Lions. Oh, Jesus.
It's a trap!
Here on Movie Night Extravaganza, we're all fans of big swings, movies that try to do something different, even if that means throwing everything against the wall in a frantic motion. Antonia Bird and Ted Griffin's 1999 Western cannibal satire, Ravenous, is one of those big swings. Ravenous is one of 3 screenplays that Ted Griffin sold to studios in rapid succession in a week. Griffin loosely based the idea on a crazy pair of cannibal incidents in the American West. The one everyone knows is the Donner Party, a group of 87 settlers who were heading for California. They instead became trapped in the Sierra Nevada during the winter of 1846 to 1847 and began to starve. They ate horses and oxen, then dogs, then the leather and rawhide from boots and saddles and belts. As members of the group began to die of cold, sickness, and starvation, some members of the Donner Party began to eat the dead. And then 2 Native American guides were also killed and eaten before half the group was finally rescued. A similar incident, 3 decades later in 1874, the Colorado Cannibal Incident, involved a prospector named Alfred Packer, who had been guiding a 6-man party that got lost in the San Juan Mountains. Originally, 12 men had set off together for the Colorado Territory to look for gold after they had met a young man named Alfred Packer who claimed to be an experienced prospector and guide. They headed down the old Spanish Trail, nearly starving in the process, as many of the men decided that Packer was a fraud who knew nothing of the area. The 12 men split into groups, Packer leading one, Bob McGrew leading the other one. Packer's group were last seen on February 9, 1874, after leaving a friendly native chief's camp they had stumbled on. The chief had warned them about the conditions in the Rocky Mountains, especially the San Juan Mountains, higher and more brutal. They were offered shelter and food for the winter, but Packer's group declined and took off. On April 16th, 65 days later, Alfred Packer wandered out of the woods alone at the Los Pinos Indian Agency. He was given food, but kept throwing it up, claiming that because of his near starvation, he could no longer hold food down. However, he didn't look like he was starving. He looked well fed. Later, members of the McGrew group began showing up at the Indian Agency. They quickly started poking holes in Packer's story that he had been left behind by the other 5 and was left to freeze. Packer's story kept changing, and the McGrew group kept hearing that Packer was using the wallets of other group members. It was then that tribesmen showed up with dried human flesh they had found, and a council was convened to get the truth. After his first testimony, Packer was caught trying to kill the clerk who had taken his statement. This is when Packer admitted to cannibalism, but claimed that the pact had been made that anyone who died could be eaten by the other 5. However, by this point, the McGrew group started talking about all the suspicious behavior they had originally witnessed, and that they believed Packer was a criminal and a thief. The McGrew theory is that Packer murdered the group, intended to rob them and make a hasty retreat, but got snowed in and began eating the bodies. Packer was detained in a makeshift jail, while members of the agency, McGrew group, and law enforcement went searching for bodies. Finally, the 5 bodies were found, skulls smashed, all in various states of decay, and a path to Packer's shelter. However, upon getting to Packer's makeshift cell, it was realized that he had escaped. He'd be caught in the 1880s living under the name of one of his potential victims in Wyoming, tried and convicted. This story made a huge sensationalist headlines across the country as the Colorado Cannibal. Ravenous takes these 2 stories and turns them into a satire about manifest destiny and American consumption.
Manifest destiny. Westward expansion. Come April, it'll all start again.
We get the story of Lieutenant John Boyd, played by Guy Pearce, a coward fighting in the Mexican-American War in 1847, who sees his entire unit getting slaughtered but freezes and then plays dead, which leads to his being taken to a Mexican fort as a dead body. During his trip, he is continually splattered by his commander's blood that gets in his mouth, and he begins to drink it. He is given extra strength and power by the blood, which he uses to overpower the Mexican fort. Ravenous is like a vampire movie in that eating human flesh gives the cannibal strength and powers and also heals all wounds. However, confessing to what he did and throwing up after seeing raw meat, Boyd is drummed out of the army and shipped off to California's Fort Spencer. Fort Spencer is an outpost manned by losers and rejects like the very creepy and skin-crawling Colonel Hart, played by Jeffrey Jones, David Arquette, Jeremy Davies, Neil McDonough, Stephen Spinella, and the Native American actor Joseph Running Fox, as well as the excellent Native American actress Sheila Tausey, are all employees of Fort Spencer. Stuck in a cave, starving and running out of horses, oxen, boots, and belts, The party turns to eating the dead. And then Calhoun claims Colonel Ives begins eating the living too.
You said that afterwards your hunger was different, that you felt wanton.
Yes.
Did you feel it all physically changed? Stronger?
I seem to remember something like that. A certain virility.
This sets up a search party where the Fort Spencer crew are led by this cannibal to find Ives and his wife in the cave. However, once you taste human flesh, you're left with a constant craving, and things quickly go south. Everyone in the party, except Captain Boyd, are seemingly killed off, and Boyd returns alone. Native Americans believe in the story of the Wendigo, an all-consuming greedy monster who feasts on humans. These traditional legends are cautionary tales about not becoming selfish and letting consumption take precedence over the needs of the group. The cannibal, supposedly known as Calhoun, who returns as Colonel Ives, is apparently one such Wendigo.
Wendigo, tanu liunil mushka lolishke. Ojibwe tano dahamado glogashli.
It's an old Indian myth from the north.
Wendigo, mushka ki iglo, tanu temlu.
A man eats another's flesh. It's usually an enemy.
Ives' plan is to consume the settlers who have consumed their way across the West, feasting on those who have ravaged the country sea to shining sea. They are flooding in, searching for gold in Northern California's mountains. So Ravenous becomes a metaphor for manifest destiny. Quite a crazy feat for a cannibal Western satire that's basically a vampire movie. Unlike all the other movies that take place in California, Ravenous was filmed in Slovakia and Mexico rather than California. Antonia Bird was the third director after Macedonian director Milcho Manchevsky and Raja Gosnell both began work that fell through. This may explain why this film feels like so much was thrown at the wall. By the time this film was finished, it had a budget of $12 million, and 20th Century Fox opened it at 1,040 theaters. It only recouped $2 million by the end of its theatrical run.
Ravenous left me flat.
I loved Ravenous. I loved the way that Antonia Bird, the director of this film, made it look so cold and wet and dark. I didn't mind the dark. I love the fact that in the movies you can see darkness. It's not all kind of daylight like on television. And I like the fact that these people are involved in this kind of cross-fertilization of a cannibalism movie and a vampirism movie. And I also like the comedy.
It had mixed reviews from critics. Among its fans, surprisingly, was Roger Ebert, who praised it for avoiding the cliches of the vampire movie using cannibalism and the cliches of the cannibal movie using vampirism.
You know, Ben Franklin once said, "Eat to live. Don't live to eat." Huh? Huh? Well, it's an easy decision, Boyd. You can either famine or feast, live or die.